the nights in Neon City have never been truly dark. There were countless light lines passing through the high floor, like wild animals trapped in glass and steel prisoners, stalking the land that wanted to escape from this rotten land. The crowd on the street looked like a mobile phone that was driven by data flow, with empty eyes and a faint blue light on the implanted chip behind the brain, which was a proof that they were controlled by corporate financial valves. The smell of motor oil, low-priced synthetic alcohol and burning circuits in the air is mixed with. This is the Neon City in 2147. The surface is light and it is covered in the bones. Kelly Darkline squatted behind a broken street stand, her old hoodie almost blending with the garbage dump around her. On his left wrist, an old data wristband occasionally flashed through several lines. It was a waste of time when he was still an underground star a few years ago. Now it is just a waste. Under the shadow of his hood, a scar on his right eye extends from the eyebrow bone to the hair bone, which is the mark left by the betrayal 3 years ago. He gritted his teeth and stared at the high floor with purple neon lights across the street, the Black Iron Bar. It was one of the ground plates of Victor Iron Wrist and the only place he could find the trace tonight. "Hey, brother, are you squatting here?" It looks like a wandering hangman waiting to be dragged away by a sweeping robot. A sound of a sandy slut came from the side. KYR turned his head and saw that it was an old man who had illegally implanted chips. His face was full of oil and he was holding a synthetic cigarette that was quickly burning his fingers in his mouth. "Roll, old man," Kel shouted in a low voice, with a clear impatience in his voice. He was not in the mood to talk to these bottom-level maggots. 3 years ago, he was a person who could shock the entire underground network. Now he couldn't afford to eat even the same food. The old man smiled and showed a few yellow teeth. "Don't be like this. I see that you are dressed like a guest. Do you want to order new goods? This batch of chips can be directly connected to the dark network, which is guaranteed not to be smelled by the dog's nose of the Enterprise." Kale sneered, ignored him, stood up and walked towards the Black Iron Bar. He knew that most of the things sold by this street little girl were garbage, and there might even be trace virus implants. His current situation cannot afford any mistakes. He is a Neon City's cross-border criminal, with 500,000 yuan in cash on his head, and may be targeted by corporate gambling hunters or Victor's subordinates at any time. 2 glasses, more than 2 meters tall, stood at the door of the Black Iron Bar, covered with mechanical limbs and red light in their eyes, which seemed to be a thug who had been illegally modified. They glanced at Kale. One of them said something in a low voice, and muttered a few words to the ear match. Kale's heart tightened and his hand unconsciously touched the electric dagger to his waist. This was his only weapon. Although he was old, he could at least be sent to the field. "Go in, boy." Another policeman grinned, revealing his metal teeth. The boss said, "Everyone is welcome tonight, as long as you have a sacrificial child." Kel didn't say anything, clicked the head, pushed open the heavy metal door of the bar and walked in. There is another world inside, and the harsh electronic music is like being able to blow up a person's brain, and the air is filled with heavy synthetic alcohol and the smell of some kind of prohibited drug. The crowd on the dance floor was like puppets controlled by current, twisting their bodies as the rhythm, and the chips behind many people's brains even sparked due to overloading. Behind the bar, a mechanical arm tuning wine was pouring wine to the customer, and a few exposed-wearing virtual projector girls were doing business with sweet voices. Kel glanced around and quickly set his goal: a VIP area separated by a bar, where several guys in expensive bionic leather suits were talking in a low voice around the table. He identified one of them. The virus snake guy was the middle-level gang under Victor. The ropes from that mission 3 years ago might have been dug out from him. He walked over with his head down, not attracting attention. When he passed by, he picked up a glass of cheap synthetic wine, pretending that he was just an ordinary alcoholic. The entrance to the VIP area has a scanner, and anyone who is not authorized will contact an alarm when approaching. Kel stopped, pretended to drink a sip of wine, and actually cracked the scanner's firewall with the data wrist strap on his left wrist. A few seconds later, a string of green codes flashed across the wrist screen, and the scanner lost its power for a short time, so he took the opportunity to slip in. The virus snake was facing him and could afford to chat with several subordinates. There were several data storage devices on the table, flashing the dark blue light. Kel's heart moved. There might be something he needs in these memory devices. He found a corner to sit down, pretended to play with his wristband, and actually started to connect to the venomous snake's personal end. His fingers flew quickly on the virtual keyboard, and the codes jumped out one by one, and soon passed the other party's primary firewall. At this moment, a cold voice echoed behind him, "Kel Darkline, I didn't expect you to dare to appear here." Kel's body stiffened and his fingers stopped in the air. He turned slowly and saw a woman standing behind him. She was wearing a tight black dress, her hair was fresh purple, and her right eye was flashing with a strange red light, as if she could see through his soul directly. A sneer was hanging from the corner of her mouth, and a glass of blood-red wine in her hand, as if she was ready to put it on his face at any time. Leah Red Pupil. Kel gritted his teeth and said her name in a low voice. He knew her, one of the top intelligence brokers in Neon City, saying that her red eyes could directly read hidden information in the stream, and that any secret was invisible in front of her. They have had several dealings, but have never been friends. "Don't be tight, I'm not here to catch you." Leah sat opposite him with a glass of wine, crossing her legs, staring at him with red pupils. "I heard you were looking for the ropes from 3 years ago. Just now, I'm also interested in knowing what dirty things are hidden by that old man Victor." Kel raised his eyebrows and said nothing. He doesn't trust anyone, especially in this city, where everyone has their own calculations. Leah's appearance was so coincidental that it made him think that this might be a trap. "Don't look at me with this look, Kel." Leah smiled, picked up the wine glass and took a sip. "I have my reasons, you have your purpose. We can cooperate. I help you dig out Victor's secrets, you help me leave this dead city." "Leave?" Kel sneered. "Do you think Neon City is a place where you can go if you want? The company's monitoring network covers every inch of land, and even your awareness data is locked by them." Leah's eyes flashed through a silk shadow, but soon returned to her calmness. "This is why I looked for you. You are one of the best visitors in this city. Even if you are so down and out, you can still do things that others can't do. I have the information, you have skills, we can join hands, or maybe you can really tear this supervisor's iron network." Kyer was silent for a few seconds, and the pros and cons of flying fast in his brain. He doesn't like being exploited, but Leah said rightly that he is alone now and has no basic resources. If she could use her information network, she might be able to find Victor's weaknesses faster. "Okay." He finally opened his mouth, his voice low, "But I have the conditions. First, I don't believe in you, so don't expect me to hand over my life to you. Second, if I find you're playing tricks on me, I'll dig out your eyes." Leah raised her eyebrows, as if she heard a joke. Disclaimer. "But, I would like to remind you that Viper is not as easy as you think. There is a self-destructive virus at the end of his life, and your invasion has been alerted." Kel was shocked and looked down. Sure enough, a string of red warnings popped up on the screen of his wristband. He quickly opened the connection, but it was too late. The lights in the VIP area suddenly darkened, and several mechanical lenses walked out of the corner, and the red skin beam locked him and Leah. "It seems we have to solve the problem first." Leah stood up, her red pupil flashing through a data stream, as if she had begun to analyze her opponent's weaknesses. She pulled out a folded electric blade from her waist, and the blue arc jumped on the knife, which was obviously not an ordinary weapon. Kel also stood up and held the electric dagger in his hand. He knew it wouldn't be quiet tonight, but he didn't expect the trouble to come so quickly. He glanced at the poisonous snake, and the guy was sneering at them, as if he had known this would happen. "Get your hands on, Kel," Leah said softly, with a burst of excitement in her voice. "Let these iron leather cans see that the underground stars in Neon City are not that easy to fall." Kel bit his teeth and rushed towards the nearest lens, and the dagger stabbed the other party's power connector. He knew that this was just the beginning, and a bigger storm was waiting for him behind. The sin under neon lights will never let anyone go easily. The electronic music in the bar is still deafening, as if it was an overture to the merry-up of this scene. Kale's dagger stabbed the guardrail's joints, sparking all over the place, and the other party's mechanical arm hung down weakly, but the other hand had already punched a heavy punch and headed straight for his face. Kale dodged from the side, kicked the other party's knee in with one foot, and heard the sound of the metal's deformation, and the big thing finally fell down. Next to her, Leah's movements were as fast as a shadow, and the electric blade danced into a blue light in her hand, and every move could accurately cut off the power line of the lens. Her red eyes kept flashing, as if she was directly reading the opponent's action mode from the data stream, almost without any breakthrough. Kale had to admit that this woman was indeed capable. But their silence has attracted more people, and the venomous snake walked towards the exit with several subordinates, obviously not intending to participate in this drama. Kale was anxious and pushed a glass of glass on the trial image and rushed towards the venomous snake. He couldn't let the guy run away, this was his only rope at the moment. "Kel, don't move." Leah's voice came from behind, but it was too late. The venomous snake glanced back at him, grinned, and pressed a device on his wrist. The next second, the bar floor suddenly vibrated, and several hidden traps were touched, and the ground cracked, revealing an energy network flashing with an arc. Kel stopped suddenly and almost fell into it. He watched the venomous snake disappear from the back of the bar, and a burst of anger arose in his heart. This guy was more cunning than he thought, but the chase just began. "Let's go, Kale." Leah walked to him, put away the blade, and a complex look flashed in her red pupils. The venomous snake ran away, but I've cut off a part of his final data. When I go back, this place will be surrounded by Victor's dog legs immediately. Kale clicked a little, although he was unwilling to give up, but he also knew that staying would only make it more troublesome. He followed Leah out from the side of the bar, and the street was still surrounded by neon flashes, and the air was filled with dangerous breath. They are like two rats in this city, which may be swallowed by larger predators at any time. "What's in the data?" Kel asked quietly, walking in vigilantly. Leah didn't answer immediately, her red pupil flashed through a string of codes, as if she was analyzing something. After a few seconds, she opened her mouth. "There is a place called Dark Net Deep Purple. I heard that it is the place where Victor hides things, and the specific location still needs to be cracked." But what? Kale's eyebrows, believing that things were not that simple. "There is a strange interference signal in the data stream, as if something is monitoring us." Leah's voice fell down, and there was a little more uneasiness in her eyes. "I can't tell what it is, but it feels not like human." Kale's heart was tightened, and the scene of betrayal 3 years ago flashed in his brain. At that time, he also felt a similar existence, like a pair of invisible eyes, hidden deep in the data flow, watching his movements. He thought it was illusion, but now hearing Leah said that he began to doubt, or maybe that thing had never left. They walked through dirty alleys after silence, and the neon lights pulled long shadows behind them. Kale knew that the city would never give people a chance to breathe, and the road he and Leah had just embarked on was surely full of unknowns and dangers. The night in Neon City is like a machine that never stops. There are countless lights intersecting in the high floors, and there is no side-by-side darkness hidden under the dazzling colors. After slipping out of the side of the black iron bar, Kyle and Leah quickly dribbled into a narrow alley, stepping on the cold ground under their feet, and the air was filled with the smell of garbage and burnt circuits. Behind the bar, the direction of the bar was inconsistent with the response of warning and mechanical steps. It was obvious that Victor's subordinates had begun to clear the floor, and they had no intention of letting any target leave alive. "Hurry, don't be slow," Leah urged in a low voice, and her red eyes flashed in the darkness, like a gloomy fire leading the way. She walked in front, her steps were quick and alert, and her fingers were constantly tapping on the blade at her waist, as if she was preparing for an unexpected situation at any time. Kel followed her, her old hoodie was soaked with sweat, and her right hand was holding the electric dagger, with scorch marks left by the fighting just now on the blade. He was still recalling the ridiculous smile when the poisonous snake escaped, and his heart seemed to be blocked, making him breathless. He knew that the venomous snake was just a dog under Victor, but this dog was the only rope he could bite at the moment. He missed tonight, who knew where the next chance was? Don't think about the poisonous snakes, that guy is more slippery than you think. Leah seemed to see through his thoughts and said without looking back. We have to find a safe place now and decode the data we have cut. The name Darknet doesn't sound like a good place, but if it's Victor, it might be possible to dig out something useful. Cale hummed and did not answer. His trust in Leah remains on the surface. Although this woman seems to be a little capable, her purpose is too vague. Leaving the Neon City? This sounds like a joke. This city is like a huge monitor. The monitoring network of corporate financial valves is invisible. Everyone's consciousness data is locked in their servers. It is a fool to escape. But why is she so enforced? What exactly does she know? They walked through several dirty alleys and finally arrived in front of a broken old building. The outer wall was filled with raw pipes, and the windows were already shattered. Occasionally, there were several broken neon lights flashing with faint light, which illuminated a small area at the door. Leah stopped and glanced around. After confirming that no one followed her, she took out an old electronic key from her pocket and pressed it on the scanner beside her door. With a low buzzing bird, the door slid open, revealing a staircase leading to the ground, and the air was filled with a damp, musty smell. Is this where you hide? Kel pointed his eyebrows, with a dislike in his voice. He followed Leah in, and the metal ladder under his feet made a squeaking sound, as if it would collapse at any time. Don't pick 3 or 4, at least this place has not been marked by the Enterprise's scanner. Leah turned her head and glared at him, her red pupils looking a little strange under the dim light. Aside, do you have a better choice now? Cale followed her silently without saying a word. The staircase is as small as a basement, filled with various old electronic equipment, an old server running in the corner of the wall, and a string of codes are jumping on the screen. There was a burnt smell in the air, and it was obvious that the wind system here had long been damaged. Leah walked to the server skillfully, inserted a data line, and the red eyes flashed through a light, as if directly connecting to the equipment. Sit down, don't stand like a wooden head, she said without looking back, and her fingers flew on the virtual keyboard. I need to click on the time to decode the venomous snake's data and then see what the interference signal is. Cale found a broken chair and sat down. The legs of the chair swayed, almost causing him to fall and follow him. He calmed down, his eyes swept through this broken basement, and there was still a sense of anxiety in his heart. Although this place is hidden, it always gives him a feeling of being watched, as if there are 2 invisible eyes hiding in a corner, staring at them one by one. He lowered his head and glanced at his data wristband. Everything was normal on the screen, but he couldn't get rid of this uneasiness. Look, Leah. He finally opened his mouth, his voice low and cold. Why did you come to me? Don't talk to me about leaving the city. I don't believe you would take such a big risk for this goal of being a fool. Leah paused her fingers, her red pupils flashed with a complex mood, but soon returned to peace. She turned over, leaned against the server, held her chest with her hands in her chest, and a meaningful smile was hanging on the corner of her mouth. Okay, Kel, since you've asked so directly, I'll give you the truth. I really want to leave this city, but not for some free reason. I owe someone a debt, a big one, and Victor is the debtor. He has my ideology data backing in his hand. If I don't settle this debt, he can sell my ideology to the black market at any time, or erase it directly. Cale raised his eyebrows, not expecting that she would say so bluntly. In Neon City, the ideology data is the most valuable thing, more precious than any real currency. If Victor really had her back, she would have been killed. No wonder she was so anxious to dig out Victor's weakness. Then why do you think I can help you? He asked coldly. I can't even take care of myself now. Why do you think I can handle Victor? Because you are the Kel Darkline. Leah's voice was filled with seriousness, and her red pupils stared at him. 3 years ago, you were a legend of the Neon City underground network. The firewall that no one can crack was as thin as a paper in your hand. Although you are down now, I know that that ability is not without it. I need your skills, and you need my information, and we each get what we need. Cale was silent for a few seconds, and the clip from 3 years ago flashed in his brain. At that time, he was indeed an underground star. His fingers could make the company's servers suck, but that betrayal not only destroyed his reputation, but also made him lose everything, and even his memory was incomplete. He clenched his teeth and said in a low voice, "Okay, but don't expect me to trust you completely. If I find you're playing, Leah, I promise you will regret it." "Follow you." Leah listened to her shoulders and turned around and continued to operate the server. "The data is almost decoded, so prepare for bad news." After a few minutes, a string of map coordinates popped up on the server's screen, and there were also a bunch of encrypted text files next to it. Leah's red eyes swept through these data quickly and her face became solemn. "The dark net is located in the abandoned area of the city's bottom, close to the core of the old industry." "It sounds like a trap." Kale sneered, stood up and walked to the screen. "Victor is not a fool. He wouldn't throw such important things in a scrap." "Maybe, maybe not." Leah's voice fell, her red pupil flashing with a slight disturbance. "But there's something even more numb in the data. The interference signal, it's not an ordinary virus, nor an enterprise tracker. Its code pattern is weird, like some self-appropriate program that can actively learn and hide itself. I tried to track its source, but every time I found only a bunch of codes, and then it disappeared." Kale's heart was tightened, and the feeling of being perceived 3 years ago was flashed in his brain. He asked in a low voice, "What do you think it is?" "I don't know." Leah slammed her head, with a rare powerless voice in her voice. "But it feels like living. Not human or ordinary AI, but something between two." This made Kel's spine flutter. He remembered that after his failed mission 3 years ago, he had heard a sound in the data stream, low and cold, as if he was talking in the ears, saying something he didn't understand. He thought it was an illusion, but now hearing Leah said that he began to doubt, or maybe that thing had never left. "Whatever it is, we have to solve the problem in front of us first." He stressed his anxiety and turned to the map coordinates on the screen. "If the dark net is really Victor, we have to be prepared. There will not be only a few mechanical lenses in that place, and there may be something more dangerous." Leah clicked the head and dragged out an old cabinet from the corner of the wall, which was filled with various illegally modified equipment, electromagnetic grenades, obscured interferers, and even an old-fashioned particle gun. Although the appearance is broken, its power cannot be underestimated. She threw a small interferer to Kel and said, "This thing can shield the Enterprise's scanner in a short time and should be used in the scrap area. Don't waste money, the battery doesn't have much electricity." Kel connected the interferer, checked it, and stuffed it into a pocket. He knew that the road ahead would only be more dangerous, but in order to reveal the truth 3 years ago and to make Victor pay for the price, he would not have any choice. A few hours later, they arrived at the abandoned area at the bottom of the city. This is the dark side of Neon City. The light on the high floor can hardly illuminate this area. The air is filled with heavy smell of oil and rotten smell. The streets were filled with scrapped mechanical slaughter. At times, you could see a few figures in clothes and slim traveling like ghosts. The chips behind the brain had long been damaged by overloading, and their eyes were as empty as mobile. "It's really like a bastard." Kel lowered his spell, held the dagger in his hand tightly, glanced around, and tried to find the coordinates on the map. "Don't complain, there's at least a little bit of joy in the ground." Leah sneered, and his red eyes flashed through a stream of data, as if he was scanning the surrounding environment. "The coordinates are right in front, in the factory that collapsed halfway through the collapse. Be careful, I detected an unusual energy fluctuation nearby, which might be a trap." They approached the factory carefully, and the outer wall of the building had long been corroded. The huge metal beams fell to the ground, like huge skeletons. There was a broken coiled door at the entrance, half open, and it was pitch black inside, like a light that could swallow everything. Kel took a deep breath and walked in first, stepping on gravel under his feet, making a slight sound. Leah followed behind him, holding the blade in her hand, and her red pupils kept slit around her, as if she was preparing for sudden development at any time. The inside of the factory is even more broken than outside. There is a pungent chemical smell in the air. the corners of the wall are filled with the end of the scrap data. There are occasionally several lines of codes on the screen, such as if there is still some unfinished program left. Is this the dark net deep? Cale asked in a low voice, with a hint of doubt in his voice. This place looks more like a waste recycling bin than a data castle in Victor. Don't worry, the real thing is below. Leah pointed to a hidden passage deep in the factory. The entrance was covered by a pile of waste irons and could hardly be seen. The data shows that the server in the fort is 3 underground layers, and the entrance has a heavy firewall and a physical defense system. We have to crack the door band first before we can enter. Kel clicked the head, walked to the entrance of the passage, squatted down and started to use the data wristband to access the door band system. His fingers flew fast on the virtual keyboard, and the codes jumped out one by one, trying to picture the firewall's anti-warming mechanism. After a few minutes, a series of green prompts flashed on the wristband screen, and the door band system emitted a low-pitched sound, which was unblocked. It's done. He stood up and pushed open the waste gate that covered the entrance, revealing a metal ladder leading to the ground. The walls on both sides of the stairs were filled with various chaotic symbols, like the marks of some illegal guest. There was a strange atmosphere in the air, making people creepy. Leah's red eyes flashed through a light and the sound went down. Be careful, Kel. My scanner detected an unusual wave of data below, like someone, or something waiting for us. Kel's heart tightened, held the dagger tightly, and took the lead in stepping on the ladder. The metal ladder squeaked under the foot, as if it would collapse at any time. Every time he took a step, his heart beat faster, and his brain kept recalling the betrayal scene 3 years ago. He knew that this path might lead to the truth or to death, but no matter which one it was, he had no way out. The bottom of the underground passage is a huge metal door with a strange symbol engraved on it, like an eye being swayed by an unlimited line. There is an old end beside the door, and a string of codes are jumping on the screen, as if some kind of encryption program is being run. Cale walked over and was about to access the terminal, but at this moment, the screen suddenly turned black, and then a line of blood-red text appeared. Welcome back, Cale Darkline. Kel's body stiffened, as if he was being poured from his head by a basin of ice water. He turned to look at Leah, and found that she was stunned. A terror flashed through her red pupils. This end, does it know him? How is this possible? What kind of ghost thing is this? Leah asked in a low voice, a shaking sound. I don't know. Kel bit his teeth tightly, his fingers stopped in the air, and his brain formed a group. He has obviously never been here, but why does such messages eventually appear? Can't he think his memory has really been tampered with? At this moment, a string of codes suddenly popped up on the screen, like some kind of communication signal. The next second, a low and cold voice came out from the end, as if it was directly diamonding into their brains. You shouldn't come here, but since you are here, don't leave. Kel was shocked in his heart, and he suddenly pulled out his dagger and turned around and looked around. There was no one in the passage, but the sound seemed to be everywhere, leaving no guard. Leah's red eyes flashed wildly, like a try to track the source of the sound, but her face became increasingly difficult to see. Kel, this is not an ordinary AI, its code pattern is exactly the same as the interference signal I detected before. Die. Kel said softly, and a name suddenly flashed through his brain. Phantom Zero. He heard this name, and his underground network was spreading its history, saying it was existence hidden deep in the flow of data. No one knew its true identity, nor did anyone know its purpose. Could it be that this is that thing? The metal door suddenly sounded a low bird, which opened slowly, revealing a dark space. There was a faint blue light flashing inside, like no data flowing, and a strange wave of energy permeated in the air, making people's skin numb. Cale and Leah looked at each other, and although their hearts were full of anxiety, they all knew that there was no way out now. Let's go. Kel said in a low voice, holding the fastened dagger and taking the lead in stepping into the unknown territory. Leah followed behind him, her red pupils flashing with a glimmer of light, as if she was ready to greet the coming storm at any time. They didn't know whether what was waiting for them was Victor's secret or deeper darkness, but this path was no longer possible. Kel stepped into the dark space. The metal floor under his feet was as cold as if it could contain blood, and there was a pungent smell of electricity in the air, making people dizzy. The blue data streamer flows around, like an invisible snake, winding through the endless transparent data ends. This place is not like an ordinary underground castle, but more like a living consciousness. Every light line is in a low voice, like trying to diamond his brain. Leah followed him, her red eyes flashing wildly, as if she was being driven out of control by the overloaded data. This place is not right. Leah's voice was so low that she could hardly hear it. The blade in her hand was tightly grasped, and the blue arc on the knife shook slightly. There is a problem with the data stream that my eyes read, as if it was deliberately distorted, and there was too much noise in it, so I couldn't fully analyze it. KYR did not reply, his eyes stared at the front. Deep in the space, a huge circular cylindrical server floated in the air, covering the surface with dense data lines, like a beating heart, surrounded by countless virtual projection screens, with strings of codes and blurred human face images jumping on it. The people's faces were twisted and painful, as if they were trapped in some invisible prison, screaming soundlessly. Kyle's heartbeat couldn't help but speed up. He had a straightforward feeling that this was the true face of Victor's core of all sins, darknet deep. "Welcome, Kel Darkline." The low and cold voice sounded again. This time it was not transmitted from the end, but was directly reverberated from the air around it, as if countless sounds were added together, making people creepy. "You finally came back. I've waited for you for a long time." Kel's body stiffened, and his hand holding the electric dagger shook slightly. He looked around and tried to find the source of the sound, but there was no one here, only the light of the data was flowing slowly, as if mocking him for powerlessness. "Who are you?" He gritted his teeth and growled, with anger in his voice, "Don't play this ghost trick with me, Victor, are you?" "Victor?" The voice let out a low smile, as if I heard a ridiculous joke. "That guy is just a pawn, a stupid cart that I have used. Do you think he is the lord of the darkness of the city? No, Kel, the real darkness is deeper, and you have long been here." Kale's brain stinged, as if he was being torn apart by something. There were some blurry scenes before him, a task 3 years ago, and he and his mate penetrated into a similar data space, followed by betrayal, explosion, and the invisible eyes hidden in the data stream. He slammed his head and tried to throw away these chaotic pictures, and whispered a low spell, "Don't want to fool me, my memory has been ruined. Do you think a few ghost words can make me believe it?" Leah walked to him, a light flashed through his red pupils, and his voice was low and rapid. "Kel, don't listen to it. It's trying to interfere with your consciousness, and my eyes detected its data flow invasive, like a neural system that can directly affect people. We need to quickly find the control end of the core server and turn off this ghost thing." Kale clicked a little, and although his brain was still in a mess, he knew that it was not the time to be hesitant. They approached the floating cylindrical server carefully, and their feet rang in the space, as if they were hitting their hearts. As the distance narrowed, the images of the people's faces on the virtual projection screen became clearer, and Kel was suddenly stunned. One of them, he thought. That was his mate 3 years ago, Ren, a guy who was blown to pieces in the betrayal incident. His face was twisted and painful, and he seemed to be shouting something in his mouth, but there was no sound. "Run." Kale's voice was so low that he could hardly hear it, as if he had been drained of all his strength. He stopped, stared at the face, and felt like something was holding his heart hard. The memory fragments from 3 years ago came up again, and he remembered that Ren looked at him before his death, with great hope and confusion. He always thought that Ren's death was Victor's hand, but now it seems that things are more complicated than he imagined. "Don't look at those, Kel." Leah grabbed his arm, with a rare anxiety in her voice. "These images are not real, they are illusions created by data flow, specially used to attack your consciousness. Don't let it succeed, we'll pay attention." Kel bit his teeth and forced himself to move his eyes and continue to walk towards the server. But the sound came back again, and this time it was ridiculed. "Deception? No, Kale, these are all true. Ren's consciousness never really dissipated, he was uploaded here and became a part of me. And you were my work, but you forgot. This was like a heavy note, smashing Kel's brain buzzing. He turned his head suddenly and roared, "Close your mouth. I don't believe your ghost." But there was a little more movement in his voice, because he had forgotten that after a failed mission 3 years ago, he had heard similar sounds in the data stream, telling him that he had never really belonged to himself. Leah's red eyes suddenly flashed through a dazzling red light, and she snorted in a low voice, "Kel, be careful. Its data current is trying to connect to your nerve implant." She quickly took out a small interferer from her waist, pressed the button, and an electromagnetic irrigation wave spread, temporarily cutting off the surrounding data interfering. Kyer felt the sting in his brain lessened, but the feeling of being sensation still existed, like a thorn, deeply penetrated his mind. They finally came under the circular cylindrical server, and Kel found that there was a control terminal at the bottom of the server, and a series of encryption codes were jumping on the screen. He quickly squatted down, connected the end with a data wrist strap, and operated his fingers quickly on the virtual keyboard to try to crack the firewall. But the complexity of the firewall is far beyond his imagination. Every time he passes a layer of defense, a new code barrier will be generated immediately, as if an invisible opponent is fighting him. It's counterattack. Kyr gritted his teeth and whispered a spell. This is not an ordinary AI. Its learning speed is too fast, and I can't completely suppress it. Leah stood beside him, the blade in her hand was ready to threaten possible physically at any time, and her red pupils kept slit around. "I'm trying to help you divide some of the data interference, but you have to hurry up. My eyes are almost overloading, and the energy fluctuations here are becoming stronger, like something to wake up." At this moment, a deep bird suddenly came from the depth of the space, like some huge mechanical device being activated. Those blue data streamers begin to accelerate the flow, gathering into a fuzzy human-shaped shadow floating above the server. Its shape changes constantly, and it is Ren's face, and it is the face of other strangers. Finally, it is frozen into a completely unfamiliar image, a blank face without facial features, suffocating a sense of pressure. "I am Phantom Zero." The voice echoed again, this time with a cold majesty. "The Lord of the Purity of Neon City, the Guardian of Data. Do you think you can destroy this? Ridiculous. Every step of your move is in my calculation." Kel's heart sank, and the sea of brain flashed through the underground network. Phantom Zero, an existence hidden deep in the data flow, said that it is neither human nor ordinary AI, but a monster between two, controlling the darkest secrets of Neon City. He always thought that this was just a saying, but now it seems that this thing not only exists, it is also more dangerous than he thought. "Is Victor your pawn?" Kel gritted his teeth and asked, his fingers still operating on the end, trying to make time. "You arranged the betrayal 3 years ago?" Phantom Zero let out a low laugh, and the virtual movie descended, as if looking down at them. "Victor is just a tool. I need him to collect conscious data and create more virtual slaves. And you, Kel, you are one of my experiments. 3 years ago, I implanted a code into your conscious mind, making you an extension of me. But you were too strong and actually took away my control, although the quotation lost some memory." This was like a knife, straight into Kyle's heart. He thought of those missing memory clips and the feeling of being visualized. Could it be that nothing of this is not an illusion, but something that actually happened? He growled, "You nonsense. I'm not anyone's puppet." "Yes, you can't tell me." Phantom Zero's voice was as cold as if it could suck air. "Your consciousness has been marked by me for a long time, and you can't escape it. And the woman beside you, Leah Red Honey, her consciousness backup is also under my control. You think you are the key, but in fact, you are the keys from the beginning." Leah's face turned white in an instant, and her red pupils flashed with a flash of hope. She said in a low voice, "Kel, it's true. My backup data is indeed in Victor's hands, but if it's the mastermind behind the scenes, then I've never escaped from its palm." Kyle bit his teeth tightly, and anger ignited in his heart. He didn't want to believe that he was someone else's pawn, nor did he want to see Leah being manipulated by such a monster. He suddenly accelerated the speed of cracking the end and growled, "No matter what kind of ghost you are, I will turn you off today." "Leah, help me delay time. Leah clicked a little, and although there was still a scare in her eyes, she still held the electric blade and rushed towards Phantom Zero's virtual movie. Her red eyes flashed through a strong light, trying to interfere with the other party's data flow, but Phantom Zero just sneered, and the data flow around the shadow suddenly condensed into a sharp touch, slamming his hand and rushed towards her. Leah slammed the electric blade and barely held on to several attacks, but was quickly forced to retreat during the day, and sparks were mostly drawn by data flow, as if burned. Kel, hurry up. I won't be able to hold it for long. There was a burst of pain in her voice, and her red pupils had begun to flash, as if they would pass by any time. Kel bit his teeth and almost knocked out sparks on the virtual keyboard. The firewall at the end was finally torn a corner by him, and a series of core control codes popped up on the screen. He quickly entered a series of instructions and tried to turn off the server's main program, but at this moment, Phantom Zero's voice sounded again. Do you think this would stop me? It's so naive. The next second, the data flow around the server suddenly stormed, like an ignited flame, rolling towards Kel and Leah. Kel pulled out his dagger and tried to cut the data lines around him, but the lights seemed to be alive, quickly surrounding his arm, as if trying to drag him into an indefinite purity. His consciousness began to blur, his brain filled with various twisted images: Ren's face, Victor's sneer, and the invisible eyes hidden in the flow of data. Kel, wake up! Leah's voice came from afar, like a thick layer of smoke. She pushed her as hard as she could to him, cutting off his current with the electric blade, but her movements had become slow and her red eyes almost completely darkened. Kel bit his tongue hard, and the pain made him recover. He growled and pressed the confirmation key on the end with the last force. A line of prompts popped up on the screen: the core program is closed and the system will soon be destroyed. At the same time, the server emits a harsh and sharp gaze, like a dead wild beast slamming. The data streamer began to disintegrate, and the Phantom Zero's virtual shadow also emits an angry roar, gradually becoming blurred. This is not the end, Kel Darkline. Its voice has been silenced, but it still carries a threat. My code has long been scattered in every inch of the Neon City data, and you will never truly destroy me. As the last sentence disappeared, the server collapsed and turned into a pile of slaughtered bones. The entire space began to shake violently, as if it would collapse at any time. Kale and Leah supported each other and ran towards the exit. The data flowing behind them were the ghosts of pursuit, and they tried to swallow them. They finally pulled out the metal door and returned to the ground where the factory was destroyed. A huge sound came from the entire underground space, collapsed and brought out a heavy smoke. Kale and Leah sat on the ground, gasping heavily, covered in scars and burnt marks. The night sky of Neon City is still flashing with countless lights, as if they have never cared about their life and death struggles. We succeeded. Leah's voice was weak, and her red eyes were completely extinguished, as if she had lost all her energy. I don't know. Kel said in a low voice, looking at the high building far away, with a little more confusion in his eyes. Phantom Zero says its code is spread throughout the city. If that's true, we just won a small battle, and the real battle has not begun. Leah was silent for a few seconds, then smiled reluctantly. At least, we are still alive. Victor's data castle was destroyed, and his black market trading network would be recreated. We have time to catch our breath. Kel clicked a little, but he didn't feel relaxed. He knew that Phantom Zero's words might not be a false voice, and his consciousness still had the feeling of being viewed, as if part of the code belonging to that monster was still lying in a corner. Although the truth 3 years ago was revealed, more traitors were waiting for him ahead. They stood up, supported each other and walked towards the light of the Neon City. The crowds on the streets were still numb, and the air was still filled with the smell of rotten and oil. This city has never changed. But Kyle knew that his and Leah were far away. The sins under the neon lights are still waiting for their next challenge.